So, as longtime viewers of this channel will know, I believe that, from a purely financial perspective, there are roughly 4 factors of a successful retirement withdrawal strategy. The 4 factors are, in no particular order, income, risk, stability, and buying power. Income is defined both by how much money is coming in the door each month, as well as when that money is coming in. This is because not all retirement withdrawal strategies are systematic and linear with their income growth, or decline in some cases. And since none of us know precisely how long our retirements will be going into them, we tend to put more of a priority in having abnormally high income years in the earliest parts of our retirements. Risk is essentially just the likelihood of outliving your money. Stability is graded by how often you experience anything that would be considered an undesirable change in your income from year to year. This could come in the form of a freeze on your growth of your income or a decline in your income. And buying power is defined just like it is everywhere else, by measuring just what your money can actually buy for you at any given time, and it's largely tied to inflation. We all have different priorities in retirement. Some want to make sure their risk of outliving their money will be as low as humanly possible, and they're willing to take a lower income with less stability in order to achieve that. Others want to maximize their incomes over whatever time they have left, and are willing to take on the additional risk that generally is associated with that. Still others are comfortable with the lifestyle that their current projected retirement incomes would provide, and just want to avoid seeing that income change for the worse. You get the picture. We're all looking for slightly different things. And that's why there's so many different methods of withdrawing your money in retirement. They all correlate to high levels of success in one or maybe a few of these areas. For those who are looking to maximize their incomes, today's method may be the one for you, because today we're going to be talking about the 1/n method. We're going to be covering how you use it, the pros and cons associated with it, as well as how to mitigate some of the downsides of the strategy. Let's get started. But before we get going, be sure to like this video if you haven't already, as it really does help out the channel a lot, and subscribe with notifications on for more money-related videos like this one every single week. So as I said, the 1/n method is a strategy that seeks to maximize your income in retirement over a predetermined length of time. This, and other income-focused strategies like it, is an intriguing method for some because most of the other popular retirement strategies, such as the 4% rule, share a common complaint. They all assume that the worst-case scenario is going to happen to us in retirement. They set their income limits based on how much we could reasonably expect to draw from our portfolios even if we experienced a major market downturn, thus setting us up in a way that we hopefully never run out of money. And while that isn't the case 100% of the time, it is the case in the vast majority of scenarios. But as you can imagine, that conservatism also means that in those vast majority of scenarios, you won't actually use a good chunk of your savings. Admittedly, for me, being the cautious guy I am, this isn't really even an issue. I'd rather have a healthy amount of money left over, both for my own sanity and stress levels while I'm alive, as well as for a possible inheritance to my family or a gift to someone or something else. But I know that's not the case for everybody. For some, this would be considered an issue, and the 1/n method attempts to fix that. So here's how the 1/n method works. The 1/n is actually just an equation that tells you what portion of your nest egg you can withdraw each year in your retirement. The n in the equation is simply the amount of years that you still expect to need to withdraw your money, and you adjust that number each year as you age. So for example, if you retired at age 70 and thought you would need to continue withdrawing money from your nest egg throughout your 70s until you reached 80, that would mean you would have 10 years worth of withdrawals to make, and the n would equal 10 in your first year of retirement. When you turn 71, you would have 9 years left of withdrawals to make, so n would be 9. In your third year, n would be 8, and so on until your last year of retirement when the n would be equal to 1 and you'd withdraw the rest of your savings. This is how the strategy maximizes your income, and the difference between it and a more conservative rule of thumb like the 4% rule can be quite astounding in this area. If we assume that John is 70 years old and he expects to need his money to last him until he's 80, and just like in last week's video, we assume that John's retirement savings is $1 million. That would mean in his first year of retirement, he would draw 1/10 or 10% of that nest egg. That would give him $100,000 to live on in his first year of retirement, and would leave him with $900,000 left in his nest egg. If John's investments grew by 8% during that first year of his retirement, that would mean he would have a nest egg worth $972,000 come the time he looks to make his second year's withdrawals. Assuming nothing had changed with his life expectancy, he would assume that he's going to withdraw 1/9, or about 11%, of his remaining nest egg. That would give him about $108,000 to live on for the year, and it would leave him with $864,000 invested. One nice thing about the mathematics behind the 1/n method is that because the proportion of your investments that are being withdrawn each year are going up, your withdrawals will usually go up each year, as long as the market doesn't experience some sort of a crash. And even if the market doesn't grow quite as fast as it did in the past, you can still maintain most of your standard of living. Just as an example, say that the market stayed flat during John's retirement. He would have withdrawn $100,000 in his first year of retirement just like before, and that would leave him with $900,000 left over. In year 2, since his investments stayed flat, he'd be withdrawing 1/9 of that $900,000, or again, $100,000. His withdrawal would be the same in year 3, assuming his investments stayed flat. Now, inflation would erode the buying power of that $100,000 income over time, but he'd still be able to maintain most of that initial lifestyle, unless the market crashes. But of course, the market does crash once in a while, and that's where we do find the first potential con of the 1/n method. Its stability, particularly in less than ideal times, is questionable, and can be terrifying in the worst of situations. If the market had dropped by 20% over the course of John's first year in retirement, his first withdrawal after the crash would only be about $80,000. That's because during the crash, his investment portfolio would have dropped from $900,000 after his first year's withdrawal down to about $720,000 over the course of that year. 1/9 of $720,000 is about $80,000. As a result, John would only have about $640,000 in his nest egg at the end of his second year of retirement. So not only did he have a solid 20% reduction in his income from his first year to his second year before taking things like inflation into account, but he also saw a drop of about 36% in the value of his savings over the course of those first 2 years of his retirement. You'd see similar things happening in other withdrawal strategies, but it wouldn't be quite as extreme because you're not taking out such a large portion of your portfolio. So like I said, it can be questionable during market crashes, but it can also be terrifying in even worse situations. What if we had another drop like we did during the dot-com bubble or housing crisis? From October 2007 to October 2008, the market fell by over 42%. With the S&P dropping from $1,560 a share to just under $900 a share in that time. If John had been unlucky enough to retire at that point, he could have seen his net worth drop from $900,000 after making that first withdrawal to about $518,000 by the end of his first year of retirement. And after making what in this case would be about a $57,500 withdrawal for his second year of retirement, his nest egg would fall to about $460,000. And of course, since the market wasn't quite done falling at that point in time, it could have gotten even worse from there over the next several months. By March 2009, when the market finally bottomed out at about $683 a share, John's net worth would have been a paltry $350,000. That's quite a big drop over the course of a year and a half, but again, that's only happening during one of the worst possible scenarios we've seen in the entire history of the stock market. So while it is technically possible, I wouldn't consider this extreme of a scenario being likely. The other potential con of using this method of retirement that I'm sure all of you have already thought of is that if you live longer than you were expecting to, you do run the risk of outliving your money. Now, this can be managed to a certain degree by thinking of that amount indicated by the 1/n equation as the absolute maximum that you can afford to withdraw each year, but not necessarily always the amount you actually do withdraw. For example, John could say that the $100,000, or 1/10 of his investments, is the most that he can take out during his first year of retirement, but there's nothing saying that he can't just take out $75,000 that first year and leave the rest of his nest egg to grow. This would help give him more of a cushion down the road should he end up needing the money for longer than he was initially expecting, but of course it also does lower your income in those early years of retirement. John could also just be willing to be particularly flexible with his spending during major market crashes, and that would help mitigate some of the damage that we just saw in the previous example. So let's say we put both of these together and revisit that last example. If John had only taken out $75,000 to live on in October 2007 when he retired, he would have had a nest egg worth $925,000 right before the start of the housing crisis. The crash would have brought that amount down to about $533,000 in October 2008, right when John was getting ready to make his withdrawal for his second year's worth of living expenses. But since John would see at that point how big the crash was, and would be uncertain as to whether the crash was over yet, he could have been extra conservative with the withdrawals for that year, just in order to conserve as much of his savings as possible. Say if he dropped his withdrawal down to $40,000 just for that 1 year to conserve his savings. That would mean that he would have about $493,000 after making his withdrawal in October 2008. That would fall to as low as $375,000 when the market bottomed out in March of 2009, but it would recover more of its value when the market bounced back. A difference of about $25,000 at the bottom of the market may not seem like a lot to some, but in retirement it can make a big difference. So in summation, based on the 4 factors of retirement, the 1/n method does score incredibly high on income, but it is fairly low in terms of risk. And its stability, and to a lesser extent buying power, is largely dependent on investment performance, and therefore it varies from person to person. Your stability could be reasonably high if all you had your money invested in was money market funds, but then you'd lose some buying power to inflation. However, if it's invested in stocks, your stability may be lower due to the volatility of the market, but over the long haul, your buying power is likely to be okay. On the whole, most of us that retire will have our money split between several investments like stocks, bonds, possibly real estate, and more secure savings like those money market funds, CDs, or savings accounts. Therefore, in most cases, the stability is likely to be roughly average. And by average, I mean good for most years, but not so good here and there due to occasional market crashes. And the buying power will likely be solid for the majority of time, since most well-diversified portfolios, at the very least, keep pace with inflation. So what do you think of the 1/n scenario? Let me know in the comments section below. But that'll do it for me today. Once again, if you haven't already, be sure to like the video as it really helps the channel out a lot. And if you want to learn more about various retirement planning strategies, be sure to check the links on the screen for my videos on how to safely spend money in retirement as well as protect your nest egg. And as always, thanks for watching.